Ranchers mocked the skinny horse. Months later, he returned and shocked them all. The annual Oakville auction attracted ranchers from all over the region. Amid laughter and taunts, wealthy men flaunted their power while evaluating the animals for sale. But nobody wanted to bid on the skeletal horse at the back of the corral. That's when Samuel Parker, a gentleman with calloused hands and a faded straw cowboy hat, approached the weak animal. The ranchers mocked both him and the skinny horse, their laughter echoing throughout the venue. "Throwing your money away, Sam," taunted Joseph Montgomery, the wealthiest landowner in the region. "That old nag can't even bear the weight of his own shadow." Samuel ignored the comments and bought the animal for a pittance. Nobody understood why such a humble man, owner of a small farm on the outskirts of town, would waste his savings on a horse that was practically on death's door. "Oh, you must be going senile," commented Anthony Fields, another prominent rancher, while adjusting his belt with its gold buckle. "That horse won't last a week." "Sometimes what we see isn't all there is," Samuel replied calmly, stroking the trembling animal's neck. The horse could barely stand. Its ribs protruded beneath its unkempt coat, and its eyes seemed dull and lifeless. But Samuel saw beyond appearances. There was something in that animal's gaze, a spark that few would notice. "Come on, friend. You have a new home now," he whispered, slowly leading him out of the auction grounds under the disdainful glares of the ranchers. The journey to Samuel's farm was slow and difficult. The animal stopped several times, panting, as if each step required superhuman effort. Samuel didn't rush him. They walked together at whatever pace the horse could manage. Connie, Samuel's wife, was waiting on the porch of their modest home when she spotted her husband arriving with that skeletal animal. She brought her hands to her face in surprise. "Good heavens, what have you brought home?" she asked, approaching cautiously. "A horse, Connie. A horse that needs our help." "But Samuel, we barely have enough money for ourselves. How are we going to care for an animal in this condition?" Samuel smiled, with the serenity that only years of hard living could provide. "The Lord doesn't give you more than you can handle. We'll care for him with what we have, and he'll recover." Connie shook her head, but knew her husband well enough to recognize that once he set his mind to something, there were no arguments. That would change it. She took a deep breath and decided to support him as she always did. The horse was settled in the small stable, where Samuel improvised a comfortable bed with fresh straw. In the days that followed, he dedicated hours to caring for the animal. He fed him small portions several times a day, mixing oats, fresh grass, and a little molasses to strengthen him. Connie, who was initially reluctant, ended up getting involved in the care. She prepared special herbal mixtures she had learned from her grandmother and helped her husband apply them to the animal's coat to combat parasites. "You need a name, friend," said Samuel one morning, while gently brushing the horse's coat. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to give us a call or leave a message on our station's website. Your support means the world to us, especially as we're working to bring you more stories like this one. Now back to our tale." "How about Hope?" suggested Connie, who was watching from the stable door. "Because that's what you saw in him when nobody else did, isn't it?" Samuel smiled, satisfied with his wife's suggestion. Hope, a perfect name. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Gradually, Hope began showing signs of improvement. His weight increased steadily, his coat gained more shine, and his eyes recovered some of their vigor. Samuel introduced short walks around the farm, always respecting the animal's limits. Before long, these walks extended to the small pond nearby. Each day, Hope seemed to gain more strength and confidence. The story of the rescued horse began to spread through the community. Neighbors would stop by Samuel and Connie's farm to see the animal's progress. Some brought carrots or apples as gifts for Hope. Among these visitors was Clara, a teenager passionate about horses. The daughter of a local shopkeeper, she began visiting the farm regularly, helping care for Hope. "He has an impressive bone structure, Mr. Parker," Clara commented during one visit. "My father knows a veterinarian in Nashville who said horses with this type of conformation are usually excellent for racing." Samuel found the comment amusing. He had never thought of Hope as a racehorse. For him, it was enough that the animal regained his health and had a peaceful life on the farm. I'm not caring for him for competitions, Clara. I just want him to live well. I know, Mr. Parker, but there's something special about him. Something in the way he moves. Clara wasn't wrong. As he recovered, Hope demonstrated a distinct temperament. He was gentle and attentive, but also had an indomitable spirit that revealed itself when he galloped across the farm's fields. There was elegance in his movements even when he was still recovering. One day, Clara arrived at the farm accompanied by her father, Richard, and a man Samuel didn't know. Mr. Parker, this is Dr. Marcus, the veterinarian I mentioned, Clara introduced, excited. The veterinarian greeted Samuel with a firm handshake. Clara can't stop talking about your horse, Mr. Parker. I was curious to meet him. Samuel led the visitor to the pasture where Hope was grazing peacefully. Seeing them, the horse raised his head and walked toward them, showing a confidence he didn't possess months ago. Dr. Marcus observed the animal with professional eyes, walking around him and analyzing his physical structure. Impressive, he murmured, stroking Hope's neck. Clara was right. This horse has noble lineage despite the conditions in which you found him. What do you mean? Asked Samuel, intrigued. See these markings here, the veterinarian pointed to. Some details on the animal's body. And the conformation of his legs. This isn't an ordinary horse, Mr. Parker. I'd bet he has thoroughbred blood or something similar. Samuel was surprised by the revelation. He never imagined that the animal he had rescued, so debilitated and on the brink of death, might have a special lineage. Who would let an animal like this reach that state? He questioned, indignant. Unfortunately, it happens more often than we'd like, replied the veterinarian. Purebred horses that don't meet their owners' expectations end up being neglected or passed along without proper care. Dr. Marcus conducted a detailed examination of Hope, confirming that his recovery was on the right track. Before leaving, he left some recommendations to continue the treatment and offered to return in a few weeks to monitor his progress. The veterinarian's visit sparked Samuel's curiosity about Hope's past. Who had been his previous owner? How had an animal of noble lineage ended up being so mistreated? These questions would remain unanswered for now, but they didn't diminish Samuel's commitment to ensuring a better future for the horse. The months continued to pass, and Hope's transformation became increasingly evident. The skeletal horse from the auction gave way to a strong and imposing animal. His coat, once dull and lifeless, now shone in the sun, and his movements revealed impressive energy and vitality. Clara, who continued visiting the farm regularly, was especially enchanted by the transformation. Mr. Parker, the Franklin County Rodeo is coming up, she mentioned during a visit. There will be a horse parade this year. You should enter Hope. Samuel hesitated. He had never thought of exhibiting Hope in public. For him, the animal's recovery was reward enough. I don't know, Clara. Those events are full of city folk, wealthy ranchers. But that's exactly why, the young woman insisted. It would be a chance to show everyone what you've accomplished, how you transformed that horse nobody wanted into a magnificent animal. Samuel reflected on Clara's words. It wasn't in his nature to seek recognition or approval, but there was something tempting about the idea of showing Hope to the same men who had mocked him at the auction. I'll think about it, he promised the young woman. That night, Samuel discussed the idea with Connie while they ate dinner in the small kitchen of their home. Those ranchers will be there, Samuel, Connie commented, serving more beans onto her husband's plate. Joseph, Anthony, and all those who laughed at you. I'm not interested in teaching anyone a lesson, Connie. I only care about Hope's well-being. I know, my old man, but wouldn't it be right to show the world what you've accomplished? The miracle you performed with that animal? Samuel smiled discreetly. His wife knew him better than anyone. We'll decide closer to the date, he said finally. But deep down, the idea was already taking shape in his thoughts. News that the Franklin County Rodeo would feature a horse parade spread quickly throughout the region. The big ranchers began preparing their best animals for the event, each determined to impress more than the others. Joseph Montgomery, the rancher who had mocked Samuel most at the auction, was known for his pedigreed horses. 4 Tennessee Walking. Horses with impeccable bloodlines were part of his collection, and he spared no expense in care and training to ensure his animals were the most admired. This year nobody will be able to outdo my horses, Joseph boasted, during a meeting with other ranchers at the local bar. Especially not that crazy old man who bought that dying nag at the auction. The others laughed, remembering the episode. None of them had heard anything more about Samuel or the horse, assuming the animal probably hadn't survived. Speaking of which, does anyone know what happened to that old fellow? Asked Anthony Fields. Who cares? Replied Joseph, shrugging. He probably realized what a fool he'd been and is too embarrassed to show his face around here. Little did they know that at that very moment, Samuel was making his decision. After talking with Dr. Marcus and receiving assurances that Hope was in perfect physical condition, he decided to enter the horse in the parade. Clara, excited by the decision, helped him with the necessary paperwork and offered to assist with preparations. You'll see, Mr. Parker. Hope will be the sensation of the parade. The days leading up to the event were filled with intense preparation. Samuel and Clara worked together to train Hope, teaching him to respond to specific commands and maintain an elegant posture during the exhibition. The horse, as if sensing the importance of the moment, became increasingly receptive to the training. Connie took care of Hope's appearance, washing him carefully and brushing his coat until it shone. She also prepared a special paste with herbs to apply to his hooves, giving them a natural shine. I never thought I'd be helping my husband prepare. A horse for a parade, Connie remarked, laughing as she worked. Life takes some unexpected turns, doesn't it? Finally, the day of the rodeo arrived. The town of Franklin was celebrating, with decorated streets and many visitors from neighboring areas. The venue where the parade would take place was packed, with bleachers full of eager spectators. The wealthy ranchers had already arrived with their horses, proudly displaying them in the makeshift stables. Joseph Montgomery, in particular, made sure to draw attention to his 4 Tennessee walking horses, all impeccably prepared and equipped with tooled leather tack and silver details. When Samuel arrived with Hope, there was a moment of curiosity among those present. The horse, now recovered and in peak condition, attracted admiring glances. His black coat gleamed in the sunlight, and his posture was that of a confident, well-cared-for animal. Clara, who had arrived earlier to help with preparations, ran to meet Samuel as soon as she spotted him. "Mr. Parker, you finally made it!" she exclaimed, excited. "Hope looks incredible." "Thank you, Clara. We wouldn't be here without your help." As they were talking, Joseph Montgomery walked by, accompanied by some fellow ranchers. Seeing Samuel, he stopped abruptly. Well, if it isn't old Samuel," he commented, with a disdainful smile. "I see you're still alive. And is this the auction horse?" he asked, looking at Hope with suspicion. "Yes, Joseph, this is Hope." The rancher circled the animal, examining him with critical eyes. It was impossible to deny the transformation, but his pride wouldn't allow him to admit it. "You've actually done something with him," he finally said. "But don't delude yourself. Thai walking horses will steal the show today." Samuel didn't respond. He wasn't there to compete or prove anything to Joseph. His satisfaction came from seeing Hope healthy and strong, regardless of what others thought. The parade began shortly after, with participants entering the arena one by one to exhibit their animals. Joseph's horses, as expected, impressed the audience with their impeccable appearance and refined training. When it was Samuel and Hope's turn, a curious silence fell over the arena. Many of those present knew the story of the skinny horse from the auction and were curious to see his transformation. Samuel, wearing simple but clean clothes, led Hope with serenity. The horse, as if sensing the importance of the moment, walked with a natural elegance that surprised everyone. His black coat gleamed under the sun, and his posture was worthy of a show animal. A murmur of admiration ran through the bleachers. Even those who had doubted the animal's ability to recover couldn't deny his impressive transformation. Joseph observed from afar, his face twisted in an expression of disbelief. How had that old farmer managed to transform that skeletal horse into such an impressive animal? After the main parade, the event announcer announced a surprise. "Ladies and gentlemen, this year we have something special. A small competition among the horses presented, a test of endurance and skill on the natural course around the grounds." The news caused a stir among the participants. Joseph, in particular, showed enthusiasm. His horses were regularly trained for similar tests, and he saw this competition as an opportunity to showcase the superiority of his animals. "Mr. Parker, are you going to participate?" asked Clara, concerned. "Hope has never been trained for some competitions." Samuel hesitated. The idea of subjecting Hope to an endurance test worried him. The horse had recovered very well, but a competition might be too demanding. Before he could respond, Joseph approached with a provocative smile. "Well, Samuel, are you going to enter your horse in the test, or are you afraid he can't handle it?" The old farmer took a deep breath. He didn't like provocations, but something inside him said that Hope was ready for this challenge. "We'll participate," he responded calmly, "but only if the veterinarian approves." Dr. Marcus, who was present at the event, quickly examined Hope and gave his approval. "He's in excellent physical condition, Mr. Parker, but remember to respect his pace during the test." The competition was scheduled for late afternoon. The course included sections of different terrain: a flat stretch to test speed, a steep climb to assess strength, a creek to cross, and an area with natural obstacles to test agility. The competitors gathered at the starting line. Joseph with his best Tennessee walking horse, Anthony Fields with a sturdy quarter horse, and several other local ranchers with their respective animals. Samuel, mounted on Hope, seemed out of place among those men in polished boots and expensive clothes. "Don't worry about the others, friend," he whispered to Hope, stroking his neck. "We'll go at our own pace." The starting shot sounded, and the horses took off. Joseph's Tennessee walking horse quickly took the lead, followed closely by the other competitors. Samuel, true to his strategy, kept Hope at a controlled pace. "Look at that! The old man's already falling behind," someone in the crowd jeered. But Samuel didn't care about the comments. He knew Hope better than anyone, and understood that the secret was in managing the animal's energy. On the flat stretch, the other horses opened up a considerable lead. When they reached the steep climb, however, the rhythm changed. The animals that had spent too much energy at the beginning began showing signs of fatigue. Hope, on the other hand, tackled the climb with steady determination. Without rushing but without pausing, he gained ground on the competitors who were now struggling to keep their horses moving. By the time they reached the creek, only half the competitors were still in ideal condition. Anthony Fields' horse refused to enter the water, while one of Joseph's Tennessee walking horses slipped on the muddy bank, falling behind. Hope crossed the creek cautiously, but without hesitation. Samuel felt immense pride as he realized how the animal faced each challenge with quiet confidence. In the area with natural obstacles, Hope's experience navigating the uneven terrain of Samuel's farm proved to be an advantage. While horses raised in luxurious stables hesitated before fallen logs and thorny bushes, he advanced with confidence. The audience, which had initially favored the wealthy rancher's horses, began cheering for the underdog. The story of Hope's recovery had spread, and many wanted to see a happy ending to that journey. In the final stretch, only 3 horses remained in contention: Joseph's primary Tennessee walking horse, another rancher's quarter horse, and Hope. The walking horse still maintained a small advantage, but showed clear signs of exhaustion. Joseph, realizing he might lose his lead, used his whip mercilessly, forcing his animal into one last effort. The horse responded, but its movements were increasingly tense. Samuel, on the other hand, merely whispered words of encouragement to Hope. The horse, as if understanding the importance of the moment, found strength for one final push. The 3 animals crossed the finish line almost simultaneously, raising a cloud of dust that made it difficult for the judges to see. There was a moment of confusion until the official result was announced. In third place sat the quarter horse of William Olivetti. The crowd applauded politely. In second place, the Tennessee walking horse of Joseph Montgomery. A murmur of surprise ran through the audience. If the walking horse came in second, that meant... And in first place, ladies and gentlemen, the horse Hope, owned by Samuel Parker. The explosion of applause was deafening. Clara jumped for joy, while Connie in the bleachers couldn't contain her tears of emotion. Samuel, still mounted on Hope, seemed astonished. He had never participated in a competition before, much less won one. But there he was, the center of attention. with his recovered horse being acclaimed by everyone. Joseph couldn't hide his frustration. He approached Samuel with his face red with anger. "This can't be right," he protested. "Your horse must have been given some stimulant. I demand a test be done." Dr. Marcus, who was closely monitoring everything, intervened. "Tests will be done on all animals as required by the regulations, but I can guarantee that Mr. Parker's horse is healthy and shows no signs of prohibited substances." Joseph huffed, walking away with large strides. His defeat was even more bitter, for having been inflicted by a simple man whom he had belittled. The award ceremony was a moment of glory for Samuel. The old farmer, habitually reserved, found himself center stage, receiving a trophy and an envelope, with a cash prize. "Would you like to say a few words?" asked the announcer, offering him the microphone. Samuel hesitated, unaccustomed to speaking in public. But then he looked at Hope, at Clara and Connie, and found courage. "I'm not a man, though of many words," he began with a trembling voice, "but I want to thank everyone who believed in this horse when nobody else did. Hope taught me that we should never judge by appearances, and that with care and patience we can overcome any difficulty." The audience applauded enthusiastically. The simple but profound words touched the hearts of many present. After the ceremony, as Samuel prepared to take Hope back to the farm, he was approached by a well-dressed man who introduced himself as a horse breeder from a neighboring county. "Mr. Parker, I was impressed with your horse. I'd like to make an offer to buy him." Samuel shook his head. "I'm sorry, but Hope is not for sale." "I can offer a considerable amount," the man insisted, mentioning a sum that would leave Samuel and Connie comfortable for the rest of their lives. For a moment, the old farmer remained silent, contemplating the offer. That money would solve many of their financial problems. But then he looked at Hope, at the animal he had rescued from the brink of death and transformed into a champion. "I appreciate your offer, but my answer is still no. Hope is priceless." The man seemed surprised, but eventually accepted the decision with a respectful nod. On the way back to the farm, Samuel, Connie, and Clara traveled in silence, each absorbed in their own thoughts. The trophy was safe in Connie's lap, and Hope followed calmly in the improvised trailer. "You could have sold Hope for a lot of money," Clara finally commented, breaking the silence. "Money doesn't buy everything, child," replied Samuel with a serene smile. "Some things are more valuable." In the days that followed, the story of Hope and Samuel circulated throughout the region. Local newspapers published articles about the horse that nobody wanted that ended up becoming a champion. Visitors began appearing at the farm, curious to meet the famous horse and his owner. Among these visitors was Joseph Montgomery. The rancher, still visibly displeased with the defeat, appeared at the farm a week after the competition. "I've come to see this horse up close," he announced without properly greeting Samuel. "I want to understand how an animal in that state managed to recover so well." Samuel, always polite, invited him to see the stable where Hope was resting. The horse, seeing strangers, immediately stood up, showing his imposing stature. Joseph circled the animal, observing him with critical eyes. Finally, he stopped in front of Samuel. "I want to buy this horse," he declared. "I'll offer double what that breeder offered on the day of the competition." Samuel smiled calmly. "I'm sorry, Joseph, but as I said before, Hope is not for sale at any price." The rancher seemed genuinely confused. "I don't understand. You could live comfortably for the rest of your life with this money. Why refuse?" "Because some things are priceless. The trust this animal placed in me, the journey we've traveled together, that's worth more than any amount." Joseph looked at the old farmer with a mixture of frustration and, surprisingly, a new kind of respect. "You're a strange man, Samuel." "Parker," he finally said, "but I admire your determination." Before leaving, the rancher made one last offer. "If you change your mind, my offer stands. And if you want to use Hope for breeding with my mares, we can negotiate an arrangement that would be advantageous for both of us." Samuel thanked him, but gave no definitive answer. His priorities were elsewhere at the moment. Life on the Parkers' farm changed considerably after Hope's victory. The prize money, while not a fortune, allowed Samuel to invest in improvements to the property. A new and more spacious stable was built, not just for Hope, but also for 2 more horses that the old farmer rescued in similar conditions. Clara, inspired by the story of recovery, decided to study veterinary medicine. Her parents, impressed with her dedication, supported her decision. "All thanks to Hope and Mr. Parker," explained the young woman during one of her visits to the farm. "You showed me how much we can accomplish when we truly believe." Dr. Marcus began visiting the farm regularly, not just to care for Hope and the new rescues, but also to learn from Samuel. The traditional techniques the old farmer used, combined with the veterinarian's scientific knowledge, proved extremely effective. "I'm thinking of writing an article about your methods, Mr. Parker," the veterinarian commented during a visit. "I think many professionals could benefit from this knowledge." Samuel's fame as a horse whisperer spread. Ranchers who had previously looked down on him now sought his advice. He received everyone with the same humility, sharing what he knew without arrogance. Hope, meanwhile, continued to surprise everyone. His health and vigor seemed to improve with each day, and he became a kind of symbol for the local community. Children from schools in the region took field trips to the farm to meet the famous horse and hear his story. 6 months after the competition, a new opportunity arose. A statewide equestrian festival would be held in Nashville, and Samuel received a special invitation to participate with Hope. "It's not a competition, Mr. Parker," explained the festival representative. "It's more of an exhibition. Your story has inspired many people, and we'd like you to be part of the event." Samuel accepted the invitation, touched by the idea that his experience with Hope might inspire others to give a second chance to animals in similar situations. The festival was a grand event, with participants from all over the state. Samuel and Hope had a special moment in the main arena, where their story was told to thousands of spectators. The old farmer, overcoming his shyness, briefly shared his journey with Hope. "Sometimes what seems like a burden turns out to be the greatest blessing," he told the attentive audience. "Hope has taught me more than I could ever teach him." The presentation moved the audience and generated even more interest in the story. Journalists from major state media interviewed Samuel, and his experience gained prominence in reports about animal welfare. Joseph Montgomery, who was also participating in the festival with his horses, observed everything from a distance. The high admiration Samuel received bothered him, but something had changed in his perspective. During a casual encounter backstage at the event, the rancher approached Samuel. "I have to admit, Parker, you did something few could accomplish. You transformed that dying horse into something extraordinary." Samuel accepted the compliment with humility. "Anyone could have done the same, Joseph. All it took was seeing beyond appearances." "Perhaps," replied the rancher thoughtfully, "but few would have the patience and heart for it." Before walking away, Joseph made a surprising comment. "I have a mare on my ranch. She's thin, injured. The veterinarians say there's not much to be done. But after seeing what you accomplished with Hope, I'm thinking, maybe she deserves a second chance." Samuel smiled, recognizing that small but significant sign of change. "If you need help, you know where to find me." The return to the farm after the festival was peaceful. Samuel and Connie were satisfied with the experience, but eager to return to the simple routine they appreciated. Hope seemed to share that feeling. When released into the familiar pasture, he galloped freely, as if celebrating his return home. Watching the animal, Samuel reflected on the extraordinary journey they had shared. A year earlier, Hope was just a skeletal horse that nobody wanted, condemned to insignificance and oblivion. Now, he was a symbol of recovery and renewal, admired by all. But for Samuel, the greatest value wasn't in the fame or recognition. It was in the deep connection he had developed with that living being, in the mutual trust they had built, and in the lessons they had learned together. In the end, he commented to Connie as they watched Hope grazing peacefully, "What matters isn't how long we live, but how we live each moment." His wife smiled, affectionately squeezing her husband's hand. "And how many lives we touch along the way," she added. In the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Joseph Montgomery appeared at the farm, bringing the mare he had mentioned. The animal was in deplorable condition, similar to Hope's initial state. "I don't know if there's any saving her," admitted the rancher, with unusual humility. "But if Anyone can help her, it's you, Samuel. The old farmer accepted the challenge. The mare, which was named Faith, was settled in the stable next to Hope's. It was the beginning of a new recovery journey. Samuel noticed with satisfaction that Hope seemed especially attentive to the new resident. The horse would often approach the stable divider as if checking on the mare's well-being. "Looks like Hope wants to help too," Connie commented, observing the interaction between the animals. "Maybe he recognizes in her what he himself went through," replied Samuel. "Sometimes those who have faced hardships understand another's pain best." While caring for the new rescue, Samuel realized that his experience with Hope had given him a confidence he didn't possess before. The methods he had developed, the techniques he had perfected, all would now be applied again with the expectation of another recovery miracle. Clara, who continued to be a constant presence at the farm, was excited about Faith's arrival. "It's like the farm is turning into a refuge, Mr. Parker," she commented during a visit. "First Hope, now Faith, who knows how many more will come." The idea of transforming his small farm into a refuge for mistreated horses had never occurred to Samuel. But now, with the experience gained and the recognition obtained, the possibility seemed increasingly real. It would take more space, more resources, he pondered. "But there wouldn't be a shortage of supporters," replied Clara, enthusiastic. "After everything that happened with Hope, I'm sure many people would help." Dear listener, if you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to give us a call or leave a message on our station's website. Your support means the world to us, especially as we're working to bring you more stories like this one. Now back to our tale. The idea gradually took shape. Dr. Marcus offered technical support, promising regular veterinary care. Clara and her school friends offered to work as volunteers, and surprisingly, some local ranchers, including Joseph, showed themselves willing to contribute financially. "Who would have thought," Connie commented one night as they ate dinner, "all this because of a horse nobody wanted?" Samuel smiled, thoughtful. "It wasn't just the horse, Connie. It was the chance we gave him. Sometimes all someone needs is an opportunity to show their true worth." Faith's recovery, though slow, was on a promising path. The mare, initially distrustful and frightened, began responding positively to the care. Her wounds were healing, her coat gaining more shine, and her behavior gradually becoming more sociable. Hope seemed to exert a positive influence on her. The two horses developed a special connection, as if sharing a secret language based on similar experiences. "It's almost as if Hope is teaching Faith to trust again," observed Clara, fascinated by the interaction between the animals. The refuge project began to take concrete form. A piece of land adjacent to Samuel's farm was acquired with the help of donations. New stables were built, following a design that prioritized the comfort and well-being of the animals. Samuel, who had always been a reserved man with few ambitions, found himself at the center of an initiative that was growing beyond anything he could have imagined. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, he found a new purpose in this mission. "I never thought I'd spend my golden years caring for rejected horses," he commented to Connie, "but I confess I can't imagine anything more rewarding." His wife smiled, proud of the husband she had always supported, even in the most difficult times. "It's because you've always had this gift, Samuel, the gift of seeing value where others only see flaws." Hope's Haven, as it was named, was officially inaugurated in a simple but moving ceremony. Friends, supporters, and curious onlookers gathered to learn about the project and its first residents: Hope, Faith, and 3 more horses that had been rescued in precarious conditions. During the ceremony, Samuel gave a brief speech, something unusual for the normally reserved man. "This place isn't just a refuge for horses," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's a reminder that everyone deserves a second chance, that the value of a life can't be measured by its appearance or immediate usefulness. Hope taught us that, and now we want to extend that lesson to other animals that need help." Joseph. Montgomery, present at the ceremony, approached Samuel after the speech. "You've transformed mockery into something extraordinary, Samuel," the rancher acknowledged. "When I laughed at you at that auction, I never imagined we'd be here today celebrating all this." "Life is full of such surprises," replied Samuel without resentment. Sometimes our biggest mistakes lead us to our greatest achievements. In the months that followed, Hope's Haven became known throughout the state. Reports in newspapers and television programs told the story of Samuel and his miracle horse, attracting more support and donations. New animals arrived regularly, each with its own story of neglect or mistreatment. Samuel and his growing team of volunteers dedicated themselves to each case with the same attention and care they had given to Hope. Clara, now officially a veterinary student, spent every weekend at the refuge, applying in practice what she learned in class. Her dream was to someday become the resident veterinarian of the place. "Everything I know about compassion and dedication, I learned from you and Hope," she told Samuel during an afternoon of work. "You changed my life." Hope, for his part, assumed a kind of leadership role among the horses at the refuge. The new residents seemed to respond positively to his presence, as if he conveyed a silent message that recovery was possible. 1 year after the refuge's inauguration, a special event was organized to celebrate the anniversary and raise funds. A parade with the recovered horses would be the highlight of the celebration. For Samuel, seeing the animals that had arrived in deplorable conditions, now healthy and confident, was the greatest reward. Each one carried a story of overcoming. Each represented a victory against cruelty and indifference. Hope, as always, would be the highlight of the parade. The horse that nobody wanted, who had been the subject of mockery, was now admired by all. His black coat, shiny and healthy, dramatically contrasted with the skeletal image of his first days at the farm. On the morning of the event, while preparing Hope for the parade, Samuel had a moment of reflection. Stroking the strong neck of the animal, he remembered the day he had first seen him, skinny and trembling at the back of the auction corral. "Who would have thought, friend," he murmured to the horse. "Who would have thought you'd bring me here?" Hope, as if understanding, tilted his head toward Samuel in a gesture that seemed like gratitude. The event was an absolute success. Hundreds of people came to see the refuge and its residents. The parade moved everyone, especially when Samuel entered the arena mounted on Hope, followed by Clara on Faith and other volunteers on the remaining recovered horses. Joseph Montgomery, now one of the refugees' main supporters, watched with a mixture of admiration and regret for his past judgments. "Samuel accomplished something extraordinary," he commented to a friend beside him. "He not only saved these animals, but also changed the way all of us think about them." After the parade, while visitors explored the refuge and participated in the proposed activities, a luxury car slowly entered the dirt road leading to the property. From the vehicle emerged an elegant man of foreign appearance. He introduced himself as a representative of an international animal protection organization. "We've come to personally see the work of Mr. Samuel Parker," he explained to one of the volunteers who greeted him. "The story of Hope reached us, and we were impressed with what has been achieved here." Samuel was called to receive the visitor. Always simple and straightforward, he made a point of personally showing the facilities and introducing each of the resident animals. "What you've accomplished here is remarkable," commented the representative, visibly impressed. "Especially considering the limited resources." At the end of the visit, the man made a surprising proposal. "Our organization would like to establish a partnership with Hope's Haven. We could provide additional resources, specialized training for your team, and help expand the work to reach more animals." Samuel was momentarily speechless. The proposal represented an extraordinary opportunity for growth for the refuge, but it also brought with it changes and additional responsibilities. "I greatly appreciate your offer," he finally responded, "but I'll need some time to think. This refuge isn't just a project for me, it's an extension of our home, our family." The representative understood and left his contact information, promising to return in a few weeks for a definitive answer. That night, Samuel and Connie discussed the proposal at length. Expansion would mean more animals saved, more resources, but also more bureaucracy and less of the family environment they had created. "What do you think, Connie?" asked Samuel, valuing his wife's opinion as always. "I think we should pray for guidance," she responded pragmatically, "and talk with the people who helped us get here. Clara, Dr. Marcus, even Joseph. They all have a role in this story." In the following days, Samuel sought advice and reflected deeply on the path forward. On a particularly quiet afternoon, he went to the pasture where Hope was peacefully grazing. The old farmer sat under the shade of a tree, observing the horse that had changed his life. Hope, sensing his presence, calmly approached and lay down beside him in a gesture of companionship that moved Samuel. "What do you think, friend?" he murmured, stroking the animal's neck. "Should we grow, change, or keep things as they are?" Hope just looked at him with those deep, wise eyes that seemed to understand more than an animal should. In that moment, Samuel felt a clarity he hadn't felt in days. The refuge wasn't about size or recognition. It was about the impact on the life of each rescued animal, about transforming suffering into hope, rejection into acceptance. When the representative of the international organization returned, Samuel had his answer. "We accept your help and the partnership," he said with the serenity of someone who had found peace in his decision. But with one condition: the refuge must maintain its family character and its individualized focus on each animal. We don't want to become an impersonal institution, no matter how large. The representative, impressed with the old farmer's wisdom, readily agreed. The partnership was established on terms that respected the essence of Hope's Haven while providing the necessary resources for its sustainable growth. In the years that followed, the refuge prospered. New stables were built, a veterinary clinic was installed on the property, and a professional team was hired to complement the volunteers' work. Clara, after completing her studies, officially became the refuge's resident veterinarian, fulfilling her dream. Joseph Montgomery, in a surprising change of attitude, transformed part of his ranch into a space for retired horses, working in partnership with Samuel. Hope, even with the passing years, maintained his health and vitality, a living testimony to the power of recovery and care. His role in the refuge was almost mystical. New animals that arrived seemed to respond to his presence in a special way. On an autumn afternoon, 5 years after that fateful auction where it all began, Samuel found himself again sitting under the same tree, watching Hope in the pasture. The horse, still strong despite his age, grazed peacefully beside Faith and other refuge residents. Clara approached quietly and sat down next to the old farmer. "What are you thinking about, Mr. Parker?" she asked gently. "About how life takes unexpected turns, child," he replied with a serene smile. "Sometimes what seems like a mistake ends up being the best decision we could make." "Those ranchers who mocked you at that auction," Clara commented, "they could never have imagined what would happen afterward." "Life rarely follows the path we imagine," Samuel philosophized. "But perhaps that's where its beauty lies, in the surprises, the unexpected turns, the second chances." At that moment, Hope raised his head and looked in their direction, as if he were listening to the conversation. With an elegance that defied his history of suffering, the horse walked toward them, stopping a few steps away. "You know, Clara," continued Samuel, his voice thick with emotion, "they say I saved Hope that day, but the truth is, he saved me too. Gave me a new purpose, a new direction, taught me that it's never too late to start over." Clara nodded, deeply, understanding what her mentor meant. The refuge had become much more than a shelter for animals. It was a symbol of redemption, of transformation, of hope. Hope came closer, gently touching Samuel's shoulder with his muzzle, in a gesture that seemed of affection and gratitude. The old farmer stroked the animal's neck, feeling under his fingers the strength and vitality that had replaced the fragility of years ago. "In the end," concluded Samuel, looking at the horizon where the sun was beginning to set, "it doesn't matter how much we're worth in the eyes of others. What matters is the value we see in ourselves and in the beings we love." Clara smiled, absorbing the wisdom of those simple words. In the refuge around them, dozens of animals that had been rejected and discarded now lived with dignity and purpose. And it had all begun with a single act of compassion. With an old farmer who had seen value where others only saw weakness. With a skinny horse that nobody wanted, but who carried within himself the strength to overcome all adversities. "Mr. Parker," said Clara, breaking the contemplative silence, "have you ever thought about writing this story? Hope's story?" The old farmer smiled, once more caressing the horse's neck beside him. The story is still being written, Clara. With each animal we rescue, each life we transform, we're adding a new chapter. And so, as the sun set on the horizon of the Tennessee countryside, man and horse remained side by side, silent symbols of a universal truth. That true strength isn't in the absence of fragility, but in the courage to move forward despite it. That true value isn't in appearance or utility, but in essence and resilience, and that sometimes those whom the world rejects are exactly the ones who have the most to offer. The end. Dear listener, if Hope's journey touched your heart, share your thoughts with us. Do you believe in the power of second chances? Don't forget to call our station or visit our website to support us and help bring more stories that renew our hope in life and humanity.